A bank director just wired $242 million to a man who didn't exist. Somewhere in São Paulo, Brazil, it is a Tuesday morning in March 1995. A man named Nelson Sakaguchi sits at his desk on the executive floor of Banco Noroeste, one of Brazil's oldest and most respected financial institutions. He is a director, a trusted man, a serious man. He picks up the fax. He reads it once, then again. Then he sets it down on his desk, very slowly, and stares at the ceiling for a long time. What he is holding is an investment opportunity, an offer to back the construction of a brand new international airport in Abuja, Nigeria, Africa's fastest-growing capital city. The projected returns are extraordinary. The commission attached to his name, personally, $10 million. The only problem, though Nelson Sakaguchi doesn't know this yet, is that the airport doesn't exist. The project doesn't exist. The man offering it to him doesn't exist. By the time he discovers the truth, he will have wired $242 million to a Nigerian con artist operating out of a London hotel room, and nobody will believe him. How does a banker, educated, experienced, respected, lose $250 million? Not to a sophisticated cyber attack, not to an inside job by a rogue employee, but to a man who sent him a fax. The answer involves 4 continents, 17 bank accounts, 94 wire transfers, and 120,000 white pigeons. Meet Emanuel Nwude. Born in a small village in southeastern Nigeria. No law degree, no finance credentials. A former car salesman who taught himself to speak with the authority of a head of state. By the time this story ends, he will have stolen more money from a single victim than any individual fraudster in recorded history. He will have built himself a palace, cultivated friendships with government ministers, and sat in a London hotel suite looking a Brazilian banker in the eye, while pretending to be the governor of Nigeria's central bank. He will have done this for 3 years without being caught. And when he finally was caught, he served 1 year in prison and walked out with $50 million. This is not a story about stupidity. It's a story about greed, charisma, and the terrifying power of a man who has nothing to lose, targeting a man who has everything to protect. The Man from Abagana. 1955. In a town called Abagana, in the Njikoka local government area of Anambra State, a boy is born into modest circumstances. His name is Emanuel Nwude. He is not born rich. He is not born connected. He has no family name that opens doors in Lagos or Abuja. No uncle in the civil service. No inheritance waiting. What he has, what everyone who meets him immediately notices, is presence. Even as a young man, Emanuel Nwude commands a room. He speaks with the confidence of someone who already knows the outcome. He dresses better than he should be able to afford. He remembers names. He makes people feel seen. In the language of his people, this kind of man has a word. He is an Owele, a title of honor, a community benefactor, a big man in the making. In the language of the fraud investigator, there is a different word for it, but we'll get to that. By 1995, Emanuel Nwude has done what most would consider impossible without a degree or inherited wealth. He has built a career in real estate and car sales, 2 industries that reward charisma over credentials. He has made connections. He has made money, legitimate money. And then, at the age of 40, he is made a director at Union Bank of Nigeria, a real bank, a real title, a real business card. This is the part that makes the story so unsettling. Emanuel Nwude isn't a desperate man. He doesn't need to do what he is about to do. He wants to. Because for a man like Emanuel, legitimacy is a foundation, not a ceiling. He has learned everything there is to know about how banks operate, how wire transfers move, how credibility is constructed and maintained. Now he wants to see what happens when you use that knowledge without the constraints of legality. What happens, it turns out, is $242 million. The accomplice is a man named Nzeribe Okoli. We don't know exactly when the plan is conceived. We don't know who speaks first. What we know is the outcome. The target? Banco Noroeste, based in São Paulo, Brazil. A bank founded in 1891, over 100 years old. Solid, respected, sitting on roughly $500 million in capital. And crucially, a bank with limited visibility into Nigerian governance. This last point is the key to everything, because in 1995, if you are a Brazilian bank director and you receive a letter from the Federal Republic of Nigeria's Ministry of Aviation, how do you verify
You call the number on the letterhead. Emanuel will answer. You ask for references. Emanuel will provide them. You request a meeting with the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria. Emanuel will be him. The con begins. Every great con starts with a simple message. In early 1995, a fax is sent from somewhere in Lagos to the executive offices of Banco Noroeste in São Paulo, Brazil. The sender identifies himself as Tao Williams, Director of Budget and Planning at Nigeria's Ministry of Aviation. The message is carefully crafted, professional, formal, heavy with the language of government bureaucracy, which is to say, it sounds exactly like something from a government bureaucracy. The pitch is this: Banco Noroeste has been selected as a potential institutional partner in the construction of a new international airport in Abuja, Nigeria's brand new federal capital. Africa is rising. The continent's most populous nation is building a modern capital from scratch. Ground floor investment. Historic returns. Nelson Sakaguchi reads the facts, and Nelson Sakaguchi is interested. This is the moment the clock starts. Sakaguchi agrees to travel to London for what he believes will be in-person due diligence. He is serious about this. He prepares questions. He brings documentation. He is, by all accounts, a meticulous man. What Sakaguchi doesn't know is that a crew has been assembled to meet him. Emanuel Nwude will pose as Paul Aguma, governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria. His associate, a man named Christian Anajima, will play the role of Rashid Gwamak, director of international remittance. Christian's wife, Amaka Anajima, will attend as the director's wife, a presence that adds social legitimacy, warmth, the comfortable texture of an establishment family. 3 people, 3 forged identities. One mission: take $50 million from a Brazilian banker who flew to London to do his homework. The limousine waiting at Heathrow is the first sentence of a story Sakaguchi doesn't know he's in. The hotel suite is immaculate. This too is calculated. Greed responds to luxury. Luxury is credibility made physical. Emanuel, in the role of Paul Aguma, governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, is extraordinary. He does not oversell. He does not rush. He speaks slowly with the deliberate pace of a man who knows that everyone in the room will wait for him to finish. He hands Sakaguchi a business card, embossed, gold leaf. Central Bank of Nigeria. Governor, Paul Aguma. It is a forgery. It is perfect. Then come the documents. Letters of authorization, government seals, ministry letterheads, an entire bureaucratic ecosystem constructed in advance supporting every claim Emanuel makes. This is not a hustle. This is a production, a performance rehearsed to the level of choreography. And Sakaguchi, who came to London specifically to be skeptical, sits across the table from this man and believes him. Not because he is stupid, because Emanuel Nwude is that good. In the history of confidence fraud, there are very few performers of this caliber. Emanuel belongs in a category occupied by perhaps a handful of people in any generation. Unfortunately for Banco Noroeste, this is his generation. The formal ask, $50 million, an investment in Abuja's new international airport, a once-in-a-generation infrastructure opportunity for a once-in-a-generation country, the sweetener, $10 million, a personal commission for Sakaguchi, paid quietly upon completion, his reward for his vision and his trust. And to get things moving right away, to demonstrate good faith, to create momentum, a small upfront payment of $35,000, to be processed immediately and grown into a far larger sum. $35,000 is nothing to Banco Noroeste. It's less than a rounding error on a quarterly report, which is exactly why it's $35,000. Because $35,000 buys something that no document can: psychological commitment. Once Sakaguchi sends that first transfer, he is no longer evaluating the deal. He is invested in the deal. He needs the deal to be real. Emanuel Nwude knows this. He has always known this. The wire is sent within the week. The money flows. The $35,000 clears. Then in May and June of 1995, $4.6 million follows, in installments, authorized by Sakaguchi personally, signed with his own hand, sent without the knowledge of his colleagues, his board, or his regulators. And nothing comes back. Of course, nothing comes back. But Emanuel has prepared for this moment. He has a drawer full of obstacles, facilitation fees that weren't initially disclosed, custom surcharges on the construction materials, a government committee that needs, shall we say, encouragement, a bureaucratic delay that requires one more bridge payment to resolve. Each obstacle is temporary. Each new payment is the last. The returns are just one more step away. Sakaguchi pays, and then he pays again. The genius of the con isn't getting him to pay once. It's engineering a psychological condition where stopping feels more dangerous than continuing. If Sakaguchi reveals what he's done, he loses his career, his reputation, possibly his freedom. The investment isn't authorized. The bank has no idea. So he keeps the secret, and the secret makes him easy to control. By the end of 1995, he has already transferred more money than any sane risk management framework would permit. But sane risk management frameworks are for men who haven't already committed to a lie. The money doesn't land in one place. Nzeribe Okoli, Emanuel's accomplice and the operational engineer of this fraud, manages a network of 17 accounts across 6 jurisdictions: the Cayman Islands, the UK, Switzerland, Hong Kong, the United States, and Nigeria. The transfers are designed to look legitimate, small enough at each individual bank to avoid triggering automatic review, routed through enough nodes to obscure their origin. Somewhere in the middle of this network, clean money emerges from dirty wire transfers. And at the end of the network, a penthouse in Lagos. By the numbers, and these are the real numbers, Sakaguchi will eventually make 94 individual wire transfers. 94. Over the course of 3 years, he will move $242 million, nearly half of Banco Noroeste's entire capital base, to a man he met once in a hotel room in London. And nobody notices, not for 3 years. This is the part of the story where you need to ask yourself, would I have noticed? Would you? With $242 million moving through your accounts, you build things. Emanuel builds a property empire, an 11-story building in central Lagos, his base of operations, his headquarters, his throne room, properties in North London, real estate in California. He becomes a political donor, a philanthropist, a man who can pick up the phone and reach a government minister. There are reports, difficult to verify but persistent, of connections extending to the highest levels of Nigerian federal government. Back in Abagana, his birthplace, he constructs something that the locals refer to simply as Nwude Village, a palace, a compound with its own security detail, its own staff, marble imported from Italy, and laid across floors that cost more than most people in the village will earn in a lifetime. The Owel of Abagana has arrived. He is celebrated. He is photographed at galas and political functions. He is a man of substance, of community, of respect. None of the people celebrating him know where the money came from, and he has every reason to ensure they never find out. Christian and Amaka Anajima, the couple who played supporting roles in the London performance, are now living the returns on their investment. Diamond-encrusted watches, bulletproof sports cars, palatial homes in Lagos's most prestigious neighborhoods. Amaka becomes a prominent Lagos socialite. She hosts politicians. She attends the same events as generals and business titans. She is photographed at parties. She is someone. Christian Anajima, meanwhile, moves the money. He is the man who keeps the network running, who maintains the accounts, who ensures the paper trail is always one step behind the investigators. He is also the man who knows the most, which will become relevant very soon. By 1997, Nelson Sakaguchi is a broken man. 2 years and counting. The money keeps going out. Nothing comes back. The airport remains a photograph in a brochure he now suspects was printed by a man he'll never meet again. But he cannot stop. He cannot confess. The only way out of the lie is a bigger lie, and the only thing keeping the bigger lie going is more money. He is a man walking toward the edge of a cliff, believing, needing to believe, that the ground continues beyond what he can see. So Nelson Sakaguchi does what desperate men sometimes do. He goes looking for a miracle. He finds Maria Rodrigues. Maria Rodrigues is a Brazilian practitioner of Macumba, a spiritual tradition with deep roots in Brazilian culture, brought by African slaves and woven into the country's religious fabric over centuries. She is, by her own description, a priestess. She has a prescription for Sakaguchi's problem. A protective ritual, a ceremony of spiritual cleansing, powerful enough to ward off fraudsters, reverse his luck, and redirect the universe's energy back in his favor. The cost of this ritual, $20 million. The materials required, 120,000 white pigeons. Sakaguchi pays. He pays with money that came from Banco Noroeste, money that was never his to spend, money that belongs to the customers of a 100-year-old Brazilian bank. He pays $20 million for a ritual involving 120,000 birds. The ritual is performed. Nothing changes. The walls close in. But this is where the story gets dangerous. At this point, it's already too late to turn back. 1998. Banco Santander, one of the largest banks in the world, a Spanish institution with ambitions to dominate Latin American banking, announces it will acquire Banco Noroeste. The deal values Noroeste at approximately $500 million. Standard due diligence begins. Accountants, lawyers, auditors, the kind of forensic examination that comes with a $500 million transaction. And somewhere in that examination, one of Santander's auditors looks at a balance sheet and asks a question, a simple question. Why is roughly half of Banco Noroeste's entire capital base parked in Cayman Islands accounts? The answer is not forthcoming, because the only person who knows the answer is Nelson Sakaguchi, and Nelson Sakaguchi has been hoping, with a fervency that has long since crossed from professional optimism into something closer to prayer, that nobody would ever ask that question. Jaime Lopez is a man who has run out of patience. He has been asking questions for weeks, getting non-answers, watching the Santander auditors grow increasingly unsatisfied, watching his colleague deflect and stall. At this point, you're probably wondering, how does this even happen? Something is very, very wrong. The confrontation happens in a private office. Lies! Voices are raised. And then, the accounts vary slightly on the details, but the central image is consistent. Jaime Lopez grabs Nelson Sakaguchi by the collar. I don't have it! And Sakaguchi breaks. He doesn't just admit to the transfers. He doesn't just hand over the documents. He says something that will be quoted in every account of this case for as long as it is remembered. Gambling. Not fraud, not deception, not a catastrophic failure of judgment that destroyed a century-old institution. Gambling. The documents he hands over reveal everything. 94 wire transfers, 17 accounts, 3 years, $242 million, and an airport that has never at any point existed. Sakaguchi is fired immediately, which is perhaps the most appropriate word for someone who has just revealed that he personally authorized the transfer of nearly half his bank's capital to a fictional construction project on another continent. But here's the detail that tells you everything about the psychology of advance fee fraud. After he is fired, after he has confessed, after the documents are on the table and the fraud is completely and undeniably exposed, Nelson Sakaguchi sends $250,000 of his own personal money to Emanuel Nwude's accounts, still chasing his $10 million commission. Still, the Santander deal is salvaged. Noroeste's original owners cover the losses from personal funds to keep the transaction alive, but the wound is mortal. An American lawyer named William Ritchie is hired to begin tracing and recovering assets across more than 300 bank accounts worldwide. The hunt for Emanuel Nwude begins. The breakthrough comes in Geneva. A Swiss account holding $5 million is frozen. The bank records once examined reveal a web of connected accounts that spans 6 countries, and at the center of that web, a name, Emanuel Nwude. But here's the problem that nobody anticipated when this investigation began. Nigeria has no law that can prosecute this. In 1998, Nigeria has no legislation specifically addressing advance fee fraud at this scale. No legal framework to handle the prosecution of a man who has laundered hundreds of millions of dollars across multiple international jurisdictions. This is not an accident. The legal gap is part of the infrastructure the fraud was built on. And then, in October 1998, Christian Anajima, the man who knows the most about the inside mechanics of the operation, dies in a car accident. The timing is remarkable. Whether it is also suspicious is a question this documentary will not definitively answer, but it is a question you should not stop asking. Justice, sort of. 2001. 110 years after it was founded, Banco Noroeste ceases to exist. The reputational damage is irreparable. The financial losses, while partially covered by the Santander deal, have hollowed out the institution from the inside. 100-year-old bank, gone, because of one man's con and one banker's greed. And the man responsible, he is still in his Lagos penthouse, still being photographed with politicians, still untouched. July 2002. Nelson Sakaguchi lands at John F. Kennedy Airport in New York. He is arrested at passport control. He is extradited to Switzerland, the jurisdiction where the laundered funds first became traceable and where the Swiss authorities have been building their case for 4 years. After 14 months in detention, he pleads guilty. October 2003, convicted on 6 counts of money laundering, sentenced to 2.5 years in prison. The man who paid $20 million for a spiritual protection ritual involving 120,000 pigeons will now trade his tailored suits for a prison uniform. Justice of a kind has arrived for Nelson Sakaguchi. But the man who took the money, the man who orchestrated the fraud, impersonated the governor of Nigeria's central bank, and built himself a palace on stolen funds, he is still in his Lagos penthouse, untouched. The story of the EFCC begins in part here. The legal gap that protected Emanuel Nwude, Nigeria's absence of specific legislation to prosecute large-scale advance fee fraud, has become a national embarrassment on the international stage. In 2003, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission is established. Its first major target, Emanuel Nwude. February 2004, Emanuel Nwude, Nzeribe Okoli, and Amaka Anajima are arrested. 86 counts of fraud are filed before Abuja High Court, and Emanuel's assets are seized: cars, mansions, shopping malls, office buildings, bank accounts across multiple countries. And this is the detail that no financial crime historian can quite believe. more than $4 million worth of Italian marble. $4 million of marble. The man didn't just steal money. He used it to build a fortress of extraordinary aesthetic ambition, which the EFCC is now in the process of dismantling, one marble slab at a time. The first trial is dismissed on jurisdictional grounds, which in a story full of audacious moments is perhaps not the most audacious, because what happens next is all three defendants are immediately rearrested. A new trial begins in Lagos. Amaka Anajima requests a private meeting with Nuhu Ribadu, the chairman of the EFCC, the man personally overseeing their prosecution. She offers him cash, a bribe, to make the charges go away. The meeting is recorded. Amaka doesn't know this. News of the failed bribe reaches Emanuel. Now, a reasonable person might conclude from this information that the game is over, that bribery of the prosecutor has been attempted and failed, that they are on camera, that the only viable strategy at this point is to cooperate and hope for leniency. Emanuel Nwude is not a reasonable person. He physically walks into the EFCC offices. He sits down with Nuhu Ribadu, and he offers him half of everything he stole from Banco Noroeste, half of $242 million. Ribadu refuses. This too is recorded. Emanuel Nwude has now attempted to bribe the man prosecuting him in his own office on camera. He and Amaka are hit with an additional 15 counts of bribery on top of the 86 counts of fraud. The prosecution does not slow down. September 2005. A bomb threat forces the evacuation of the courthouse. In the resulting chaos, a man named Zeyun Lei, a key prosecution witness who can place Emanuel directly in the London hotel meetings, is approached by a group of large men. He is bundled into a bus. He is found hours later on the third mainland bridge in Lagos, beaten. The case documents he was carrying, gone. The trial resumes 24 hours later. 1 month earlier, in July 2005, Amaka Anajima has already cracked. Facing the accumulated weight of 90-plus fraud counts plus 15 bribery counts, she surrenders all of her remaining assets and pleads guilty. She is sentenced to 2.5 years. The trial of Emanuel Nwude and Nzeribe Okoli continues, and then they bring in the witness that ends everything. The verdict. Nelson Sakaguchi is flown to Nigeria. He has been convicted. He has served time. He has spent years trying to disappear from this story. But the prosecution needs the man who was there at the beginning, the man who sat across the table from Paul Agama in a London hotel suite in 1995. The man who sent 94 wire transfers to a Nigerian con artist over 3 years. Sakaguchi takes the stand. He recounts in methodical detail every step of the fraud as he experienced it. The facts, the London meeting, the limousine, the business card, the documents, the obstacles, the payments, the pigeons. He describes sitting across a table from Emanuel Nwude and believing absolutely that he was speaking to the governor of Nigeria's central bank. In the courtroom, Emanuel Nwude listens. There is a moment, and people who were present describe it differently, where something shifts in Emanuel's posture. The man who has outmaneuvered every legal obstacle for the past decade is looking at the face of the man he destroyed. And he knows it's over. November 18th, 2005. Emanuel Nwude and Nzeribe Okoli stand before the court. They plead guilty. Nzeribe Okoli receives 12 years. A convicted fraudster, a woman who attempted to bribe the head of Nigeria's Federal Anti-Corruption Agency, appointed to a government position 12 years after her conviction. A government position, and Emanuel Nwude, released in 2006 with $50 million, returns to business, returns to his community, returns to Abagana. In 2016, detained in connection with a land dispute linked to the death of a security guard, granted bail after 4 months. In 2021, 15 new charges of property document forgery. still active, still denying everything. When asked about the $242 million in 2021, Emanuel Nwude stated, with characteristic composure, that he had no idea where it had come from. The airport Emanuel Nwude faked, it was eventually built. Nigeria's Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport opened without the help of a fraudulent $50 million investment from a Brazilian bank. It operates today. Real planes land on it. Real people travel through it. An advance fee fraud, the 419 structure that this scam exemplifies, costs the global economy billions of dollars annually. The psychological mechanism at its core, greed amplified by sunk cost, the feeling that you've invested too much to stop. It is more powerful than any forged document, more durable than any fake business card. It works on sophisticated people. It works on experienced people. It worked on Nelson Sakaguchi. The most remarkable thing about this story isn't how brazen the con was. It's how human it was. Two men in a London hotel suite, one pretending to be someone he wasn't, the other desperately wanting to believe him. That's not a uniquely Nigerian story. That's not a uniquely Brazilian story. That's a story about what greed does to judgment, about what happens when a person wants something badly enough to stop asking whether it's real. Emanuel Nwude didn't invent human nature. He just knew how to use it. If this story made you angry, fascinated, or both, there's a lot more where this came from. Subscribe to Global Cipher Archives. Every week a new case. Every case, a new lesson about the world we actually live in. And drop a comment. What's the most shocking part of this story to you? The pigeons? The 1-year sentence? The $50 million he walked out with? I want to know. Until next time, stay curious. Stay skeptical.